Good morning, Australia. Good evening, Brazil. We are very happy to continue our program for the 25th Forum Doc. Today, we have the very anticipated presence of Elizabeth Povinelli, who's going to speak to us from Australia, talking about the collective Karrabing, to whom we dedicate this retrospective. This year, I had the honor of curating along with Roberto Romero, who is going to be joining us immediately, introducing Professor Povinelli. But before that, I would like to thank for the presence of everybody, particularly Raquel de Souza and Rosane Lucas, who's interpreting Libras. I'd also like to introduce Raquel de Souza, who is going to translate the conference to Portuguese, and that comforts us. And to state that in the beginning, there was only Karrabing Films Retrospective. Karrabing Film Collective is the name of this session. It has 8 films that has been produced between 2004 and 2012. And we had the chance to attend this session, and we were very impressed. But this exhibit is also a product of several other gatherings in this retrospective by Kenia Freitas, Juliana Fausto, Renato Stutman, who has written essays to this gathering that has been published in the catalog. And also to state and thank Elizabeth Povinelli in translating an article from her in an essay published last year in the magazine. This program is going to be taking place until the films are available online in the catalog. And also to state, Roberto, now I'm sharing the word with you. Good evening, Paulinho and everybody who's joining us now, who's going to listen to us later. It's a great joy for us to welcome you, Elizabeth Povinelli, this evening and morning in Australia. It was a very generous process from her and the whole Karrabing Collective. We are very happy for this gathering and this gift. It is a great birthday gift to celebrate the 25th years of this Forum Doc BH. We had Povinelli that is going to open an interaction with questions and debate, and you are welcome to formulate and leave your questions here on chat on YouTube, because we are going to share as many questions as possible. Elizabeth Povinelli is an anthropologist, professor of anthropology at Columbia University in the United States. She's the author of the books Geontologies, A Requiem to Late Liberalism, Economies of Abandonment, Social Belonging, Endurance in Late Liberalism, and The Cunning of Recognition, Indigenous Authorities and the Making of Australian Multiculturalism. Sorry for not having the translation of the titles, he said, but I'm not going to do it impromptu. And she's one of the founding members of the Karrabing Film Collective, to whom we dedicate this retrospective in the Forum Doc. This evening, Elizabeth Povinelli wanted to speak from us directly from Australia, along with the collective and filming within the collection, doing incredible things there. And she has prepared a conversation with us with the following summary. To the extent that glaciers melt and the seas rise, critical art and cinema has turned to questions of human and more than human ecologies from the point of view of decolonizing forms of community and relationality. This masterclass uses works from Povinelli and the Karrabing Film Collective to ask how collective artistic and ecological actions oriented to survivance and heritability, the struggle to reorient the ancestral past toward rapidly shifting ecological futures intervene in a multiplicity of political forms, including indigenous survivance, white nativism, and decolonizing alliance. Before inviting her, I would like to remind you that we've had this first gathering in 2019 during the exhibit Death and our canon. And this year we also had the opportunity of attending Elizabeth Povinelli's meeting with Mashakali during this edition of the Chef Doc Fest. It was a conversation mediated by James Ellie. I would like to thank him because that gathering has created more fuel for our gathering for the forum deck with the films Karrabin, and coincidentally, Mashakali is here next to me, so it is a joy for us that we are here seeing each other again during this event. Hence, I would like then to invite Professor Povinelli to share her thoughts with us.
Thank you, everyone. It's a super pleasure to be here. I am just back very late last night from Mabaluk, where everyone else is. And Mabaluk is about 7.5, 8 hours drive from where I am now. I'm in Darwin, Belyuen, where everyone lives, is about an hour away, just across the harbor. So they send greetings, and we worked out what I would talk about today. So they also are super excited that everyone's had a chance to watch for the most part, most of our films. And they also would like to say that they look forward to traveling your way as soon as, I don't know, we don't know anymore, as soon as the world allows for travel. Mabaluk, where I just came back from, is located on the southern shore of what's now called Anson Bay. And Anson Bay is just southwest from the Darwin region. So if you just keep going down, you'll hit it. And Mabaluk is part of the extensive coastal country of Karrabing Indigenous members. So everyone except me. And I'm going to talk about a project that we're working on down at Mabaluk in a little bit. But everyone thought it would be nice for me to start the conversation with a discussion of so a kind of introduction to what Karrabing is and to the methods, the film and art methods that we deploy and how these methods have changed over time and why. And then talk about what film and art is for in a really basic level. So kind of the meta method, I suppose, of Karrabing work. And this takes us to will take us to a conversation about the human and more than human world in which the films and art works are developed, that to which it addresses, and finally, how this engagement with the human and more than human world, which is really the point of our work together, also sits in a broader framework that we all share, including me as the one non-Anson Bay member. And this takes us really way back into the history of settler colonialism and how settler colonialism links my ancestral, I don't know what to call it, village area in the Alps, Corrisolo, which is melting now, and the other members' ancestral home along the coast, which is heating up with the seas rising now. So that was going to be the general framework. Cool. And also, if people want to just, I'm not sure how we're doing the interaction, but if people want to just interrupt and ask questions along the way, so I will pause, like I'll do a little part, pause, see if there are questions. Do a next little part, pause, see if there are questions. Does that sound good? And I will also be showing some video along the way. Roberto, yeah, good. Okay, good. Okay, so first, just an introduction to Karrabing. What is Karrabing? And we've talked about this in many places. Karrabing is a Emiangle word, part of the Emiangle language, and the Emiangle language is the language of Mobiluk, with this area that we're going to be talking about. Inside of Emiangle lands are multiple forms of non-human ancestral, we say beings, but it's like that, we don't want it, it's like ancestral relations. It's the best way. They're non-human ancestral relations that everyone in Karrabing now says that and we all say now totem, because we think that translates best. But it's important to understand what totem means for Karrabing. The land, say in Emiangle lands, the land was shaped, literally shaped, by a number of ancestral non-human relations. For instance, Mobiluk is this little peninsula point along the coast. So it goes like this, and there's a little point that's kind of shaped like that. And then at the end of the point, there's a reef. And if you know how to look, you can see. And if you have experience fishing in the region, then you know this, both the peninsula and that reef is the shape of a barramundi fish, or we say muddy in Emmy. And we also know where that fish, which now it lay down there, like it did this thing somewhere else, then it came here and we say laid down. And when it laid down, it imprinted the landscape. I'm just pausing. There are multiple other totems in this sense that also shaped, when they lay down there, shaped the landscape. And these non-human ancestors are passed down into the bodies through father and father's father since the beginning. So a totem is in the land. It is the land. And it is still, it's not in the past, it's right there. You're walking on it, if you see what I mean. Or you might be, the wind might be blowing on you, and that, depending if someone has like the wind meta walk, which is again a wind in ME, that's a particular wind, that's right there with you. So it's important to understand that the geomorphology is it's an ancestral present. It's not the past, it's the present. So Karrabing in ME means that there are these, it's all coastal, so it's these vast tides that happen up here. And Karrabing refers, Karrabing, we say Karrabing, and that means tide is as far as it's going to get, and it's about to start coming back. Katakal is when tide is as far up as it's going to get, and it's set to go back out. And in 2000, I don't know, we don't really remember when, but 2000, let's say 8, 9, 10, as a group, we picked Karrabing. I think it was Cecilia Lewis, who thought of this. We picked Karrabing as the term to describe the group because Karrabing, the tide, connects all the different lands of Karrabing members. So Emiango lands, that's one. Wajigan, another set. Kiuk, another set. And across these coastal and you like inland too, but lands, Karrabing has about, I don't know, I think about 8 totems that people pick up through their father and father. So 8 places that were shaped in the way I've described. But then there are multiple other places that are shaped totemically, that sort, you know, that are cared for by Karrabing. So the land is it's shaped in this rich way by non-human totemic ancestors. There are also human ancestors in the land who are co-present with us. And we look at the land when we're thinking about human ancestors, and we see evidence, that we use that word evidence. And evidence has many forms. It's the evidence of old shell middens, where they collected, you know, we still do, like sea snails and clams and other stuff. And we sit in, like there are campsites, and you just, or in oysters, like we were doing on Saturday. And we just sit there and we like collect oysters, and then we sit around and we cook oysters, and all the shells sit there. And so there are thousands and thousands of years of shell middens. Evidence, we say. There's other kinds of evidence if you know how to read the evidence. That is, ancestors, like all things, are super jealous things. So if you don't treat them right, they will punish you, punish you, punish you, just like you saw in Wuthar or saltwater dreams. Right? So that is very always, and just endlessly, I could just go, I won't start because there's endless stories. And it's not that you're bad often. Ancestors punish you when you're trying to do the right thing. That is, you haven't been back to a place for a while because, it's a big country. And here you are struggling to get back there. And the first thing they do is punish you, punish you, punish you for not having gotten there earlier. So it's really important to understand in the films, it's not like people are like bad, not doing their culture. It's that the world is preset to always be demanding more of you. All right. And these days, for a long time, the world is demanding more of you from, let's say, I just make it up, 4 or 5 perspectives. The non-human ancestral present, the human ancestral present, the settler state, climate change, right? All of these are making constant demands, competing and consequential demands on Karrabing members. Okay, so that's Karrabing. And I'm not sure if I should pause and if anyone has questions before I go to why we make films and our methods. Or should I continue? Continue. Okay. Is this
Yes,
okay?
you should continue. Yes, this is okay. Thank you. The rhythm is perfect.
Great.
We should hear you a little bit more, Paulo Maya said.
Hear me louder?
Oh, no, you should just keep going.
Oh, okay, okay.
You should proceed. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So I guess the transition from this first part, what is Karrabing, to the second part, that is, what are our methods and ultimately what are our films for. It's important to note that Karrabing is not a tribe, as I say. It's an ecological condition that joins us. And so Karrabing began. It's a word and a concept that began. Well, when did it begin? And it began around 2000, somewhere between 2007 and let's say 2009, when the results of the relentless intrusion of settler colonialism created a violent trigger event in the Belluan community where everyone in Karrabing now was born. And this riot, I suppose, happened in 2007. I arrived at Belluan in 1984, so we'd all grown up together since I basically commuted. And I'll kind of give a little background about why later. But there was this really bad riot, and about 50 people left the community and found themselves homeless and without any means of supporting themselves. And, they emailed and told me what happened because I was in New York teaching. So I met them on the beach, which is the north side of Anson Bay, where they all wound up living in tents. And it was in that context, other things happened in that context, that one day in particular in which another series of just really hard, kind of awful stuff had happened, that we were all sitting around the campfire, and Linda Yerwin said, you know, your brother, Beth Trevor, always wanted to be a movie star. Why don't we just make a little film about how we say government, but the settler state is making these demands on us to give up our culture and just get low level employment, you know, flipping burgers, cleaning toilets. And we're supposed to move into the city and do this work, but there's no housing, right? So then if anyone gets public housing, then everyone overcrowds public housing. Then the person who has the lease on the public housing gets all these fines for overcrowding, and they lose a house and they have more fines, right? So Linda was like, on the one hand, we have that. On the other hand, we have some white people saying, you should just live your traditional life in the bush and eat, you know, your long yams and your crabs. And we all know, we know how naive that is, because we still hunt. Karrabing is really a kind of bushwhacking, still living out bush back and forth. And we know that the landscape has been radically transformed, not merely from current climate change, but pastoralism, large-scale cattle pastoralism, introduction of pigs, cows, you know, this concept of like going back into the past is really super naive. So we all were like, yeah. So Linda was like, and you know, the ancestors punishing. So Linda was like, let's make a little film that shows what we're struggling in, that yes, we keep going, we keep our things strong, but let's put it in the context in which we're struggling. And everyone was like, yeah, let's do that. And I should say the 50 people, young, little kids to older people. So it's always been intergenerational. All right, so we said yes, everyone yes. And they said, we all were like, who knows how to do this? No one knew really how to do it. I mean, the mobile phone was starting. I said, I don't know, should I just buy a camcorder and you guys do, you know, get the young people to do the video? And they're, no, they said, we want you to go back to New York and find somebody you trust, bring them here so we can evaluate them. Then they're gonna like make it proper. They really knew what they wanted to look really good. And also, when this person comes, we can start learning the craft. I said, okay. So I did. And Liza Johnson, who's now, you know, works in TV in Hollywood, but was doing these smaller films, came. And she gave a little craft thing. We had the idea, you know, bush doesn't quite work, housing doesn't work, but we continue basically. And the Karrabing way is everyone has to be in it, especially in the beginning. So I was supposed to be in it. Like I was supposed to be in this. And Liza Johnson said, you know, I don't want to get involved in y'all's, you know, family time. I don't know what she said. And I know you guys have grown up and know it, like, you know, but if Beth is in front of the camera, it's going to become about her, the white woman. And we were like, oh, we don't want to lose focus. That's not the point. So I was like, great, I don't have to do the acting. And they said, yeah, but then you are assigned to learn this directing thing, which again, for Karrabing doesn't mean your boss. No, quite the contrary. It also doesn't mean you come up with the story, or that doesn't mean anything like that. It just means, like, technically, how does it work? And we boss you and what we want. It's more like Pierre Clastre, Society Against the State. So don't get this director weird auteur thing in your head. It's not that. So anyways, we made the first two films, and this is our method. So our first two films, we made with we said cameraman, which for us meant like a camera, like a real camera. Don't even ask me what it's called. That's how much, but camera, right? One camera. And then we had sound man, which is a boom, right? So boom. And one assistant. And they were outside of Karrabing, like they were, we'd say, stranger. We also had Liza Johnson for the first film, and we had David Barker, who's a wonderful filmmaker, who we called guest people. And their job was to keep walking us through how, like, just craft. The first dogs was, as Cecilia Lewis said in an ABC interview here after we finished, she said, yeah, she owned the house. That was her house. She didn't own it. It was government house. And I'll just quote her on ABC. She said, yeah, it's my story, but it's all of our stories. And that's, it's like, and it's not just Karrabing's story, like the overcrowding, the breaking of the cars, everything. It's an Indigenous wide story. We know this. When you're the end of the pipe, end of the commodity, the pipe, the racism, it's just nothing quite works. And you're always jury rigging. I don't know how to translate that. You're taking old things and trying to fix them. At the second film, Winteramuru, was an idea of four young adult guys Reggie, Jarek, Gavin Bianamu, and Kelvin Bigfoot. They came up with the basic idea of they'd find beer in the bush, be chased by cops, and probably end up in jail, because we know that's what happens. And then our way, like, we don't have script, we don't have drawing board or whatever that is, like with the pictures. We don't have pre-production. We don't have any of that. And we don't even have necessarily big meeting in which it's like someone has an idea. It starts, because it's a family. So we all, are on top of each other, and like it starts moving around. And like in Winteramuru, Kelvin and Gavin and Reggie came up, and then as it moved around, Linda Yerwin said, can't just be a picture of young guys getting drunk and going to jail, because give the wrong idea. So we should have the rangers in there. That is, we have people looking after country. Everybody, that's a good idea. Okay. And then Rex and Rex, uncle and nephew, they said, if it's about stealing, the miners have to be in there, because they're who's really stealing everything and getting away with it. Yeah, everyone said that's a great idea. Okay. So the story is, four guys find beer in the bush, which is near to a totem site, which is being looked after by one of the young guy rangers. but then their two male relations are helping the miners illegally blast because they have so many fines for just drinking or whatever, that they're under pressure to pay their fines or go to jail. And then the whole thing unfolds. So there's no script. That's it. That's the basic. And then we say, okay, let's start shooting. And we just say, okay, market set, everybody ready, go. And you know, whatever flows, flows out of the mouth. And it works because we all share decades and decades and decades and decades of living together. So if someone is like acting for someone, we just say, that's not how it works. And then they, but it's Linda Yarrow says it's real with a little bit of story. Gavin Bianamo often says it's going with that flow we all know. I call it improvisational realism. I mean, call it what you want. The point is that the poetics of our films come from the deep shared understanding of social, ecological, human, and more than human existence. Okay. Now, something happened after those two first films that are very important. A couple things. We noticed that everyone really liked making them. We also noticed that, of course, our films always are putting three kinds of presence, presents, presence together: settler colonialism, the human ancestral world, and the more than human ancestral world. So, and so as we were making the films, we also noticed that everyone was learning deeply and more about each aspect of these three presents. So in Winjira Maru, for instance, we learned we thought we were making up this toxic area that when they run through the fence, only to find out, no, that is toxic, that no one bothered telling us. And it happened when we finished the scene of running through the fence, and we all were coming out from that area to the main road, and the fictional police and us met the real police on the road, and the real police wanted to know if we were going through this toxic area. Now, we all grew up not only going through this old fence, but we collect plums there, we go fishing there. The only reason the police cared that day was that that area had been acquired under a land claim for development. So white people were going to start living there. And suddenly they told us that it had been toxic for 70 years. So we learned more about, and in Day in the Life, when we're walking through the bush and in the last part, and we happen upon this mine, this lithium mine, we also learned about that then. Right. So as we make these films, we learn more about the settler state. How does it work? We also notice that we all learn more about the ancestral present. And that includes some of us old people who, and there's like, let's say there's like 10 of us older ones who, think, oh yeah, we know everything. But when we're together, we realize, oh, I never knew that little part, right? So the stories thicken, deepen, and extend both we also usually blame the young people learn from the films, but honestly, we all are learning. So we learn, like in Mermaids, it's like we really learned that the places they go and the places they're going to are a set of totems. And so as the kids are going through it, they're learning. So that was the point of these films, is that we thicken our understanding of country, that this is for country, it's for the ancestral present. But to understand the ancestral present, you have to understand the stories, where they are, what they mean, etc. But you also have to understand the settler state and what they're doing constantly to undermine it. All right. So the first two films, we were like, yes, this is not about making film. This is about making Karrabing relation to the ancestral worlds stronger. Because in the end, who cares about film or art if your world is destroyed? Okay. The second thing we noticed after the first two films is, why in God's name are we making films according to the logic of production that comes from a settler world? Why are we doing that, right? Like, the stories don't, our relations don't, the purpose, the point isn't that. So, and that production process does not work for Karrabing, because film production, as we know, is not neutral. It imports a set of social relations. Right? You have to stay on the schedule. You have to do it. You have to, we had great, the cinematographer for the first two did Rabbit Proof Fence and 10 Canoes. The guy, he's just so wonderful, because we just, it's so make it up on the spot and not what he was used to. And he just went with it, and he was patient, and he taught us stuff. And anyways, but so it wasn't him, it was, and we also noticed, wait a minute, why are we paying these outside people? So starting with the third film, Wuthar, or Saltwater Dreams, I came back and I said, because we all were like, we're not doing this, is just not fun. It got to be kind of a grind. I don't know. And I said, you know what? We can make films on iPhones. They've now made Tangerine. First it was like, we can't do that. And I said, well, I got a good idea. Any of our anybody who will, because I got three, because one of the things is like, do the scene over and over. And since it's ad lib, it's like not scripted. Editing was much harder. It's the whole thing. So anyone who works the iPhones gets the iPhone, and then the young people, we had lots of. So in that way, we could shoot the scene from 3 different angles and not have to keep moving. And we shot through Filmic, which is just a little app. And also, since Karrabing is so collective, the stories are collective, the scripts, then the cinematography became collective. Because it was like, here, well, which way should I go? Oh, I don't know. And someone said, well, someone high, someone low, someone here. And so people started just getting whichever way they saw. So literally the aesthetics is collective. And then the schedule also super flexible. Like usually the films, a kind of core of it is shot maybe over a couple consecutive days, but you know, then we might be out somewhere and the phone's always there. Like I always have two iPhone. And it's like someone says, hey, wait a minute, this would be good for, what we're doing. And we hop out. That's why you see the clothes changing all the time because we're not in the same clothes. For instance, in Mermaids, that big fire scene came because I had been charged with getting Kieran back to Darwin to go to school by his mom. So he had come over because they were living in Darwin. And Kieran wanted to come over to Belleune for the weekend. And I said I would be responsible for getting him back to school so he could come out and hunt and everything. So we were driving him back, and because the grasslands have changed from introduced grass, there was this huge fire that we didn't even know if we could get through the road. And Kieran kept on saying, he calls me grandma, Nana fire. I was like, yeah, big fire. I think we can make it. And he said, no. The film. I was like, oh, you're so brilliant. So, we didn't have Posey, we didn't have the mermaid there, but it was just like, just talk to the mermaid. We'll get the mermaid later. And literally there's not a lot of oxygen in where we were, but it was just like that. That's how it happens. Like, amazing. And poof, we got through the fire and got back. So our methods have really changed, and the surface of the film trying to get, we also noticed that people kept on saying ancestral past, corrupt present, will it be a hopeful future? And we were like, no, it's all in the same time space. So we started working with montaging and layering in order to get that. So those are some of our methods. We really still don't know like basic things. Like we were making we call it the new movie. It's a zombie movie, which is not part of the 8. But me and Natty Bigfoot were like on the camera shooting some of the little kids who are tracking the zombie, which is me. And I said, Nana, there's some line here that we're not supposed to be cross. And she was like, what are you talking about? I said, I don't know. Something I thought I should one day say, but there's some kind of line where if you have the camera, you can't cross the line. She said, where is it? I said, I don't know, it's somewhere. But if you cross the line, then the image, I'm sure there's a technical word for this, but it's like, she said, well, I don't know where that line is. I said, me neither. So I don't even know why I'm talking. So, but our methods are like that. But the important thing is that the real, I don't know if it's a meta method. There's a method we make to the film, but the film is a method of caring for a country is wrong for survivance, not merely to record the stories, but in making them refashion ourselves so that we are oriented toward the land and the human and non-human ancestors in it. So ultimately, the films are useless unless they motivate people to always be thinking, how do I keep not only ourselves in the sense of survivance, but ally with the human and more than human ancestors that compose the land? How do we keep that barramundi totem going? How do we help it survive? How do we think about its relation to the fish that compose it? How do we do that? So I thought maybe I would pause, and in between when our hosts and I were organizing, I thought, oh, there's another little film clip I might show, but it is in English, but it has subtitles, but it's more of us talking about what our films are for. I thought maybe I could show it, and since there's subtitles, maybe
acho que pode mostrar, e aí a gente faz essa pausa para como puder.
I heard that in Portuguese.
I'm not sure if she's listening. Yeah, sure. Beth, please show us the film.
And then I thought I would show you this little clip, which it's like more of a conversation. And then I thought I would show you just literally a little clip from Saturday with me. It was me and Katrina Bigfoot and Natasha Bigfoot, who and probably, I think Kind Mad was there, I forget. Ting, we say ting a lot. We can't think of the word. We say ting, la sabila, that ting. Anyways, talking about these fish traps. So let me just say a couple things about the current project we're doing. So not part of the retrospective is a film we made called The Family and the Zombie. And we finished that up just, I don't know, January, February, something, March. And it actually got nicely commissioned. And when commissioned, it's hard for us to get commissioned because we say, give us money, trust us, we'll make a film. And you'll like it. So it's showing in a couple places in Europe, and slowly it will come out. But we also are currently making what we call an art residency for ancestors. And what is this art residency for ancestors? Well, it is what it says. It's kind of, over time, will be an open air, have open air paintings and sculptures of one sort or another. And maybe we will have projectors at times projecting our films into the tree canopy. But there may be nobody but us there, or maybe we'll do it and leave for a little while. And what we'll look at all of this are the ancestors, the human and non-human ancestors. That is, why is an art residency always for, you know how it goes, the kind of more elite, or, you know, you go the Venice style, in which, you know, it's primarily those who can afford it. Why aren't we making art literally for the ancestors, so that when they're walking around at night or in the day, they see it, they say, how cool, right? And that art resonance would be very low impact. I mean, we're building it bit by bit. But it also will hinge around Mabuluk, which I described, which is this really, it's a large point. Don't ask me how, 15 kilometers, I don't know. By like that way by maybe, it's not that, maybe 5 something. Where it's part of this, it's the mangrove, you guys know mangrove reef, Estuarine Creek, lot of totems, itself a totem, and then a lot of other important totems around it. And also a network of rock fish traps that I don't think there's another network like this. And everyone had always grown, my generation had always, we grew up hearing about, you know, oh yeah, that mob, which is the ancestors of Emmy, Moriamu, Morichab, and a little bit Wajigan. They knew how they knew making fish trap. And so we just heard fish trap. So we were like, okay, fish trap, you know. And we were beginning the process of, and this is very remote, it's very hard to get to. It takes 7 hours to get, there's an old mining road. It would take 7 hours. Imagine the landscape is basically like this, and then there are 2 points here. So it's like this, something like this. There's an old mining road here, right? All of this is swampland. And then there's just this little bit of high ridges here. And then this is this big bay. And then north of that, there's pastoral, and then you keep going, and you eventually hit Darwin. This bay is very big and very hard because there's a very large estuarine creek, and when the tide goes out, and you only have a dinghy, I don't know, dinghy, small tin boat, like you get a concussion. We've done it, like a lot of us have done it, but it's like bang, bang, you get through and your brain is like bruised. So the idea was one day to try and bushwhack a road. It's about 20 kilometers. But once we went down with boats, we had these 2 boats, and bang, bang, bang. And we got to this side. Here's the point, this Mabaluk, this Ngandawudi. We got to this side. And well, I'll show the video. This video is from Saturday, and me, Katrina, Lewis Bigfoot, and Natasha Bigfoot and Lewis and I were doing work of finding the fish traps, and we're marking them so we can try and protect it through a heritage listing. So a big heritage area, which would anchor the art residency for ancestors, all of it, just how to help it keep in place under pressure of fishing, mining, the usual stuff. So this clip is, which one is this? Yeah, this clip is like 5 minutes, but I don't think we'll do the whole thing. And you're gonna see mainly Katrina's and Natty doing the talking. So maybe we'll watch a little of it, and then I'll just quickly say what they said, but yeah. Okay, let me see if I can share screen, share sound, share. Okay, can you see that? Yeah. Okay. Hopefully this will work. I haven't looked at this. We literally, it's just, you know, it's the way we go.
Why? What we've been doing here.
Okay, I should just say, whoops. I should just say that I'm asking Katrina that we're telling the story of how we first came to know that there were all these fish traps here. And this is what's important for Karrabing methodology in film, is that the films, by this time we were making Nighttime Go, the films were taking us back to this country, right? So it was because of the films we were going back. And then since when we make a film, we're usually doing everything else too, like hunting and fishing, and because the film is kind of a side thing. Like we do the films as we're doing something else. So me and Katrina are talking first about like how she and I and this other, her cousin Jessa, my niece, came to discuss, to understand what fish trap was. Okay, so I'm going.
And
Who been there?
Huh?
Who been there?
Me, Jessica, and Beth. Set a fish trap. We were standing on it, and Beth said to us, "Turn around." And I said, "What?" You're standing on something. Fish trap.
Now where have we been? Bicker Bluff.
Crab.
You've been wanting in Bluff. Stingray, isn't it?
Stingray. Big stingray. Fat one was in that thing.
And I've been, and what I've been getting?
Gambler.
Crab, isn't it?
Crab.
And I don't know where these bum been fishing, isn't it?
Over there.
Yeah.
That's outside. They're standing wrong bomb.
Yeah, we should go open area, isn't it? Yeah, you've been getting long bomb or something, yeah.
Maybe I've been fishing back there. Looking for crab.
That day, we've been thinking the only fish trap, eh?
Yep.
We've been thinking,
But some old people, they would go camp to camp, but they're farm. They made big mob along the coastline.
Mainly this Mabulok area.
All along this Mabulok area.
yeah, hey,
Mainly this Tungum area.
yeah.
Romero Creek, right back to that tail.
Sugarback Dreaming.
Sugarback Dreaming.
Coming up along a Melville there.
Melville.
Right up to Bamayak.
Bamayak.
On a fish trap.
Yeah.
Fish trap.
Some like inside a mangrove.
Like where we been,
Yep.
first time. And you know, you might have ever been, hear about Macassin?
Yeah.
Yes.
How do I say it without saying Asian kind of?
Like Indonesian.
Indonesian from
Well, they've been the first people here in this Kaba, Blackfella, Aboriginal people. They've been coming here. They've been like a peacemaker.
Yeah,
Aboriginal and Indonesian, they live together.
yeah.
They've been getting back. They've been trading with that rake, like making sail.
Yeah.
Like all of anywhere they wanted to go, where the wind and blow. That Indonesian have gave the material, that rake, and this kind of thing. So they can use him like that kuni blowla.
Wooting it.
Yeah. And that this another map, they've been
You listening?
thing that map. You look there, they would trade to that map. Maybe they would trade give you anything.
They've been given that sea slug. What's that thing? Cucumber.
Yeah.
Trepang, they call them.
And now that you look like tamarind tree
Yes.
everywhere.
and
That from that Miss Cassin can give it that black fella.
Yeah.
Aboriginal people. That ancestor. Back in those days.
I'll just stop it there. Let me get out. Stop share. So a couple of things to know that you wouldn't know is that Natasha and Katrina are I think Katrina is 29 or 28 and Natasha is about to be 31 on December 10th. Yeah. The confidence with which Natasha is talking, and she's talking about the Macassin or these Timorese fishermen who started coming on the coast of the Northern Territory down to Western Australia prior to the white invasion. So Macassin. She's she and Katrina are naming places like that fish that I don't know if you can hear, but they say that fishtail, which is a place, and they said that Kugun, which is a Sjögrbag dreaming over there, and Melbuli and Bamiyak area. So they're giving a map of where we are. Real confidence and powerful. They had never set foot on this area until we started making these films. And hopefully you see what Karrabing films are about. They're about embodying the nature of how you belong to this place, and how your way of belonging to the ancestral, two kind of ancestral worlds, human and more than human, makes you someone who can judge settler colonialism and resist it and refuse it. So when Natasha and Katrina are talking about Macassan, and Nati says, they were the first people to encounter Indigenous Australians. So they were before white people, and they didn't try and steal the country. They were, she says, peacemakers. They traded. They said, okay, you can, she says rags, which mean canvas. The Indians said, we'll give you canvas for to make sails for boats, so you don't just have to giji lenma, just paddle. And we'll exchange tripang, or their sea cucumbers that we don't eat that, but they do. So all of these forces are now really powerfully inside of the next generation. And you can see one of our other younger members, and there's also a little girl there, maybe you can see in one of my, call her sister because she's my great granddaughter, already being able to start mapping the country. This is, I have to say, this is like amazing, because this whole area had really been very abstract because people had been forced into internment camps in the 1930s and 40s and separated from their country. And now we have little 3-year-olds like Aja, you're like my little Katie. Aja, what I say, what's this place? And Chicana says, or Penejiba for star, says Mabuluk. And what you're doing. And she just kind of maps out the area. That's what Karrabing films are about. I think I should probably, there's this, maybe I'll just share the last little thing that we're doing, and I'll share it with the screen stuff. So let me just show you something that we're also doing. Oh, and I should say, Natasha already says the next film's going to be something around these fish traps. And I should show you, I'll show you an image of the fish traps. But just to say, there's this other, whoops, that's not the one I want to show. Stop screen. There's this other project we're doing. Yeah, this is it. That is really, here it is. So, I end up there. Why was there such a connection, right? In the very beginning, 1984. Well, the Povinellis come from a very small village now in Italy, but It's up in the Alps beneath the Dolomites, and it's called Corzola. And from the really starting in the 11th century, this one little area was given these carta de regula, which meant that the little villages could self-organize, create they were like semi-autonomous, self-regulating peasants. That's what I'm coming from. And that lasted until Napoleon came over the Alps in 1796, and he really bangs it through in 1801. In our villages up there, we not only we started getting what we would call surnames or cognomen in the 1500s. So I know when Povinelli at first was a nickname, it became a surname in like around 1490s. And then we also the way in which these spaces worked, the capi familia, the head of the family, of each family would come together in these rulas or these rotations, and the capi familia would decide on the regulations. So it was very family oriented, and patrilineal, so passed through father. Big hunters, big gatherers in the Alps, pastoralists, but in the Alps, and also clan-based. So in part to deal with marriage relations. So Povinelli emerges in around 1490, and the first Povinelli clans emerge around 1750 or something. So I come from the Simultaneous Povinellis. So I'm one of the first three. So there's Simultaneous, Mortel, and Zarla were the first splits. So anyways, and this was like passed down to me. I was born in Buffalo, but because my father was the first son, his father was the first son, his father was, so it was very important because it was the first son of the first son of the first son of the first son. And there's a little book called The Inheritance that I've written about this. But I was very much raised on this notion of like, no, we're not a nation, we're part of this other thing, it's subnational. You have clan, we hunt, we know we know food. And so by the time we get to Louisiana, we're acting like that. We're still like, we're playing, we like, we always have, we're getting our turtles, whatever. So when I first show up in 1984, and the older generation above me, 2 generations above me, are describing how they organize country, they're dreaming through totem, right? But also the hunting, the clans, the subnational lands, because, yes, in Australia, but Mabaluk's still there, Rock Mabaluk, Rock Bamiak, Rock Gula, Rock Gaia. Everyone still knows, still holding on. 2 things happened. I said, and they said, well, where are you from? And I started outlining, yes, Louisiana, Buffalo, but they said, so Italy. I said, yeah, but no. And it was like, oh, and for me, it was like, oh, you guys sound like my grandparents. And they were like, white people, that clan? I was like, well, not really anymore, but did. So there was this connection. But the second thing, of course, was equally important, which is, well, then why is your life good and our life is like this? And that was the racism and settler colonialism, right? Like this. So we're not yet, but on the horizon, we're starting to talk about it, is a project that these are some maps of a preliminary art film thing in Madre in Italy. And what we're doing is we're trying to think about the ancestral present across time. So it's not like in the past, it's like, how do we think about what, just track, like what is happening to my clan in the 1500s? What's happening to Karrabing's ancestors, right? And then we go through this, the 16, 17, then 18, 19, then 2021, in which you see the way in which, even if you could say, well, kind of similar, how do structures of settler colonialism and racism, the Black Atlantic, the settler Pacific, how do they, and it's simple, but just mapping it, how do they give different opportunities or forms of dispossession? And I'll give one example and then end here is, for instance, Darwin, which Bellewain, where everyone was born and it now really lives, it's right across the Darwin Harbor. 15-minute ferry ride right now. It used to be much longer because the infrastructure was much worse in 1984 and before. Darwin wasn't settled until 1869. And until like the 1900, there were like 200 white settlers here. And some Chinese who had also immigrated in around 1890s, 1880s. But the impact was pretty devastating. Disease, they started running cattle and stuff. Napoleon comes over the mountains in a little later, like in 1896. But what happens when the British start colonizing Australia? They use the justification of terra nullius. So the genocide, the exterminations, the dispossessions are framed as putting Indigenous people in their right time zone, i.e. they're Stone Age people, and thus they should be put back in the stones, right? And literally, right? So, and by the time the invasion gets to Darwin, it starts impacting Karrabing ancestors. That justification for murder, dispossession, internment, etc., is really thick and unrelenting. When Napoleon comes over the Alps in, starting in the 1790s, he meets people like my ancestors who have clans. They relate to the human and more than human world, right? They're deeply embedded in the ecology of the place. They depend on it. My ancestors are self-regulating. They're family-based. They have common lands. They're small little private plots for vegetables, but it's a commons. Napoleon comes over and frees us from our freedom. I like to put it that way, right? Oh, you guys are still living in feudalism. We got to get rid of commons. There's this new liberty, equality, freedom, i.e. freedom to be dispossessed. Okay. So my ancestors are dispossessed of their commons and stuff. Very late, like very late. But unlike what's going on in Australia, Napoleon addresses my ancestors as humans with the potential to be free, i.e. to be self-possessing, to be the kind of humans that can possess, that can own. So we are not marked by extermination, even as we're dispossessed. which means that we can enter into the field of this emerging capitalist, republicanist, democratic, what to call it, logic. We can be proletarianized. And Glenn Coulthard has written about this. We were addressed as people who could be proletarianized. And because of that, we could take advantage of other people's dispossession. So we start moving. My entire clan by the 1930s have moved out of our village and moved into the lands of the Seneca in New York. As Glenn Coulthard says, who's a Dene from what's now Canada, says, Native Americans, First Nation people, Indigenous people, when their lands are dispossessed, they're not proletarianized. They're interned, they're exterminated, right? The dispossession is multiple and total. There's still practices of survivance, obviously. And so what we're doing with this project is just looking at that and trying to intervene in two discourses. One is nativism, white nativism, that's taking over every which way. The bad virulent form we know, which is right white nativism. But there's also an attempt to shape another kind of something going on in Europe in particular, which is people say, you know, in my village who want to return to their ancestral ecological practices in the wake or shadow of climate change, right? But we don't want to go back, like there's a lot, like we were once not Christian, we once had our own ancestral traditions, like we were once Celtic, or we were once, like in my case, we once had common lands, we once were Roman, we once were pre-Roman, right? Well, we don't want to say that as an alibi or an excuse for what is now, which is the ancestral present. Sure, Povinellis still do have clans. We have multiple, we still do have clans. But Povinellis are also materially, both the land, the bodies, the whole thing. We're the material sedimentation of having been addressed as humans who could progress. You can't sidestep that. You can't try and get around it by saying, well, I was once somebody who had common land. Who cares? I mean, yes, good. On the other hand, that doesn't somehow wash away history as sedimentation. My colleagues in Karrabing are the sedimentations of the racism and settler colonialism. And thus, all our film work is trying to go, yes, survivance, yes. You see Nati and Katrina walking through there, able to really just like, they are the consequence of Karrabing. All this experiment has worked. But you can't, what's my part? My part is not to go say, well, I also once had that, so I'm just gonna dump y'all. No, we have to say, okay, how do we find alliances in which, yes, that many people had clans, but how do we not fetishize the past, but rather work to reorganize and redirect the differential sedimentation of that history so that the toxicity doesn't always land in Black and Indigenous bodies and countries. And that toxicity can be mental, it's material, it's all material. it's ancestral and etc. So I'll just end there. And because I think I always say, oh, I couldn't talk for 2 hours, but here you go. I hope that was okay. I want to show you some of the fish traps. I said I would stop, but let me show you another one of this. This one is just a little minute and 45 minutes, 45 seconds. This is Natty, just we're in the mangrove.
You find it? That's the one. We've been outside. See, we've been a little bit outside Aja. Nana. We've been Aja. Where are you looking? Me? Not you. Because ours been really properly fish trapped. Ours been standing out. Where you think? You're looking where I'm standing. This little one there.
I don't even know what's on this. Literally, just
Well, one little thing.
we'll see if
here.
anything here right now.
Let me see. See that little thing there? Look at this little thing here. See this little one? Right there. Yeah, that one.
This one might not even be showing us the bloody fish trap.
Yeah, true. That, yeah, see this one, and then that big one over there.
Oh, what?
Well, that looks like somebody would make that, block it off.
Yeah.
All right, Ma. But definitely, we never got this one.
Oh yeah, there it is. Whoops.
All right. Let me get this little one first.
Oh.
I'm going to get this one
Not
first.
helping you,
this
eh?
one, little one.
That's not it. Anyways, okay, so that didn't help at all. Point being, you can see you can see the environment. Wait, now stop share. And what would have to find another one, but what the ancestors did is they took those rocks and they built these retaining walls inside the mangrove. Or across part of the bay, in which then when the tide went out, the fish would be trapped there. There are two ways you could just spear them, like me and Katrina were doing that day. I was trying to get a crab and she was trying to get a stingray when we suddenly said, oh my God, we're standing on a fish trap. Or there's a kind of mangrove leaf you can crumble and chuck in there and it kind of stuns the fish and they float up and you can collect them. The east side of Mavluk, we think are now the older ones because they're really encrusted with oysters. And the ones where we were there on that completely useless clip, they're really, we say clean. It looks like they had put them there yesterday. That's how we talked, like yesterday. And also the shape of the traps are really cool because they're different shapes, because these old people, well, we say old people, but these forever behind us people, they really studied how the tide worked. So they were moving the fish across various shapings depending how the tide was working. So just like, anyways, voila. So we're going to also try and think about how these fish traps were working, like, so the snow and the sea level, it's just, yeah, we're trying to think like that. Like, how do we think this global dynamic and get that on film? And now I'm done.
Então, Povinelli, muito obrigado por essa excelente
Well, Povinelli, thank you for such excellent lecture, because it clarified many things, particularly after watching the films, and now you're clarifying aspects of the geography or the methodology and the work that you developed with the collective. I'm not going to take too long, but I was thinking about a couple of questions, though I think the first one, and to a certain extent, you have already addressed, but I would like to observe that the first film for me, when the dogs speak, is one of my favorites, particularly because of the freshness of this film, from the magnificent and interpolating presence of young Karrabings, in spite of all of the other stolen generations, and also because of what you called the counter discourse, an intergeneration counter discourse. Could you speak a little bit about, though you have already addressed a bit of, addressed that issue, about this creativeness, this creativity of the presence of young people in the Karrabing collective? And in following up that question, one of the things that drew my attention when Hex Edmonds speaks to a child, and he states talks about the need to sweat in this territory. And when you talk about that, this concept of sweating, what happens when you then walk a long and sweaty walk in this space? Cinema is already recognized in this northern territory by its sweat, if you will.
That's really good. Yes. The intergenerational aspect of our filmmaking is absolutely crucial. We are a extended family. And, I'm the white person, but, we've grown up together and I have duties. Like, I'm now a great grandmother. I didn't make the kids in some literal sense, but, so what? So we're always thinking the people before us and the people after us. One of the things we say is, we will be ancestors ourselves. Or now that we have more, our little great grandkids, from my perspective, we say, yaka, new generation coming, right? So we're always thinking now, but we're thinking like coming up, like grass, you burn the grass and then the grass comes up, fresh grass. And also how to get some of these as many kids as we can, comfortable being outside in the bush, enjoying it, right? It's fun. Because, look, right now it's very hot. It's very humid and hot. So in some ways it's miserable, but in other ways it's like amazing. So yes, we're always thinking about our kids. And the zombie movie really is, the dog stalked, it was like intergenerational, and the zombie is focused on this group of kids who in the near future who are told not to go by the zombie place, but they're being stalked by the zombie. So it's very kid oriented. Also, we like watching Dog Talk because all of those kids are adults now. That's when Natty, who you just saw, was just a kid, just a kid. So it's also a way of, like, it's really, we did a little interview that's in, I can't remember where it was Ethan and Gavin and Natty and I forget who else was Shuri Jane. And it was called Growing Up Karrabing. You could probably Google it, because they have grown up inside of Karrabing. Little kids are born in Karrabing now. That is like amazing, because Karrabing is also anti-government separating, like, you know, this is your little country. This like Karrabing is, you know, even if we're fighting or something, Karrabing still is like, we should stay interconnected, because that's the best way of like keeping our country. So yeah, it's all about younger people. Oops, it's Jojo right now. I'll call back. Sorry. Sorry. So I'm glad you love that. We do too. And, you know, and in when the dog talked and you were on top of the hill, you know, I think, yeah. And they're arguing about what made those holes. Again, we were still working with this, that was first, but we just said, we all came here. We were here. You guys just say what you said when you first saw those holes. And pretty soon they were doing it. And then everybody was just sitting back listening to them. And it got more and more real until like Kieran is like, oh, I don't know what would have made these holes. And Cameron, who's now a big guy, it's like, it must be ghosts. And then Shuri Jane just boom, you guys should believe this. And I was like, wow, feeling it. So that's when we started going, wow, when we do this, if we don't have script, if we let people really go with it, from the very little to the very old, starts the actual feelings start coming. So spot on. It keeps going. It's that their generation gets bigger and then the little ones come after. The sweat is super important. You know, it's interesting, the way the settler state governs is to separate. Like you little group have this little land and you little group have this land. So you little group can make decisions about what you can put a big mine in there. The settler state does not want to hear about the way in which, say, this fish, that's Malbrook, came from over here, and that fish went up here, and this one went over here, because it says that if anything you do in this area is connected to these other areas, well, that doesn't fit property, which wants a line. And it's all these lines going all, and they want to snip it, right? And just say, here's a little money, right? In the jealous one, you know, that's Rex saying, don't listen to them. They're going to try and sweeten you up with a little bit of money, and then they're going to mine on your land, etc. And the settler state only thinks about, they've reduced modes of belonging to the human and more than human world to biology. It's like this sick racist joke. It's like, oh, we acknowledge, we recognize how you're related to land. It's biological. So if you can find a father, that's all you need. Now you can be, that's your, and on the one hand, that's right. Yes. But on the other hand, it's like a fun house mirror. It's like, no, for land to know you and you know it, you have to sweat it. The country smells you. Just smell is very important. Not just eyeball, not just seeing, and not just like you heard about it, right? I've heard about it. And not just that you were pooped out by somebody, right? You got to sweat, like animals smell, you smell, you got, and feeling, like walking, making all of these are the deep embodied nature of relation, without which this idea of patrilineality doesn't matter at all, right? So if somebody never been there for a long time, it was never there, well, that country gonna bloody punish them. We see it all the time. Oh, something happened. Oh, that's a new one. Now, they could be from that country, but no one introduced it. They've never, you know what I mean? So, but all these, oh, you can be born from a place. There are a lot of different ways in which you start like literally materially, bodily attaching that the settler state doesn't want to hear about, because you want just one group, one area, one boundary, and it has to be abstract. So the sweating is real. It's in the, it's like evidence. Or if you piss, we say, juwaing on my country now, meaning I'm in it, literally. You are part of it. You eat it, you pee and poo in it, you sweat in it. You're materially it. It's not an idea, it's real. We often go, or it's like real, can you understand it's real? So that's, and Rex Edmonds very, very clear, I think, in Dogs about that,
Muito obrigado, Robertinho, por favor.
Thank you so much, Roberto. Please, I would like to thank you tremendously. It's been incredible listening to you, particularly in addressing this transformation and the evolution of these methodologies. It's been fascinating, and I am going to share a few questions that I'm going to try to gather up in just one. It's a question that I would ask myself, which relates directly to the setting up of these films, as you have stated, how they were transformed in utilizing iPhones and this autonomy, this independence that you acquired for realizing these films. But we are also curious to hear how in this setting up this work continues, in what ways it is done, if it comes and it goes, and how these interactions are developed. And one thing that Junia Torres has stated, she inquires that in this non-linear setting, it was very debated when we organized the roundtable on Wednesday. One of the indigenous realizers felt like that for the first time she saw a film and it made perfect sense. And usually that's not what you hear from an spectator. It means they usually say it doesn't make any sense. And for the first time, you hear that it really contemplates how things are. That's more or less what she said. And that actually takes us back from the ways of narrating histories from the past and ancient people, this notion of these anthropologists we call in myth, but this non-linear structure that films also in their way of setting articulate. So if it's something that belongs to this process for you. And another question is from Rodrigo Messina about rocks listen. If the rocks listen, and the presence of greenness in these films, if the stones, if they speak, if the rocks speaks, if us modern people can hear them. And finally, a comment from myself, I think it's interesting, this movement from you in terms of the histories of your clan and your family. In ways it connects with the experiences that are rare in some anthropologists and contemporary anthropologists that studied Peter Galk, that has recently
Yeah.
passed, that
Yeah.
was engaged in a similar process in Scotland, and this relationship with the kinship.
Right.
So I was curious, as an anthropologist, these are questions that takes us back to us from our ancestors, so to speak, and the answers are so difficult as much as they are for them when we ask these questions. So I was curious in asking about these connections as well.
Yeah, cool. Great questions, really. And the second more comment, the comment that just raises, I'm going to tell everyone immediately. The first is the methods. Our methods have stayed about the same. Still, everyone says, oh, we're just going to, because I've been commuting and now COVID, and I've been very lucky to get a exemption. So this is the second time I've been here. And for the films, everyone still says, we'll start making them when you're here, or finish them up. But the idea is that it's the same. The method, I would say, the same. The art residency for ancestors, since we bushwhacked this road a couple of years ago, out of which we made a short film. If people are interested, it's called, I think we just say The Road, but it might be on our website, which is Karrabing dot something or another. It's not com, it's some other weird info, Karrabing.info. We made it for the Wexner Center's Cinetrax program. It's a really short thing. It just shows us bushwhacking. I really love it. Anyways, everyone's been like working on that while I've been stuck away for the last, I think I was stuck away for 5 or 6 months, which is a long time for me. So it's like the last 3 weekends, we just like really GPSing them for ourselves to get the shapes and the dynamics and stuff. So we, we're a big group. Some are working up in Kedgewick, some down at Marblelook. We'll probably start, since Natty said I want to do one on fish traps, that'll percolate. We'll start hopefully doing it in the fall. What it'll be, don't ask me, because we will find out when we all do it, what will be. The second thing I would just say I'm so happy about that comment. In our third film, when we started making it ourselves with the iPhone, and we started trying to do layering so we could get the same temporalities, right? And we're trying to say it's not past now, right? People, a lot of, and lovely critics, I'm not criticizing, because it's like whatever, but they started saying Karrabing's taken a surreal turn, and we're like, what? No, it's not surreal, it's more real. and we've noticed that, like, when they're shown in either other Indigenous contexts, or say that comment, that people don't know the particulars of art of this country or the totems or anything, but they get it deeply. And when we kind of show it in more, let's say, settler or European, it becomes more like surreal. And that's so super interesting. It's just so spot on, cool, and like informative. And again, it's not like we're angry at being called surreal. We don't care in some way, but that is super interesting and really important. In terms of can the rocks listen? That's one question, but can we hear? That's the other real question. And my answer is Karrabing is all about trying to keep the ability to hear in place, because it's not some like, you know, mystical thing. It's not mytho anything. It's can you, are you attuned to it? Are you attentive? Do you know how the tide, like we're looking at these fish traps, it's like, God almighty, they really studied those tides to make this thing, because this one shapes this way because it's here, and that's shaped that way because it's here. Like that kind of attunement or attentiveness, like what does this spider do, you know? Well, why don't you just kill that spider? Well, that spider is like good. We don't want all these flies. That spider is good hunter. You know, it's orienting our senses toward not logos, not language per se, but multiple semiotics. So to that, I say yes. I mean, survivance is the remaining capable of hearing it, by that, the full range of sensing. And then the final thing about clans, you know, yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I didn't come to Bellevue in 1984 as an anthropologist. I had just gotten a undergraduate degree in philosophy, and from the Great Books program in Santa Fe. So you had, outside of this little college, you had like real settler politics, and then up on the hill in Santa Fe, there's a place called St. John's College, and they teach, you all take the same thing, the Greeks, and then the Enlightenment, then the Germans, and then like whatever. So I went as a like philosopher, and with this clan stuff, with my own ancestral history, and my growing up hunting, and like my older sister's obsession with biology and biological entanglement. So that's how I first went, and that's how we kind of talked together. And it was like, as kind of as this little philosopher, I was like, oh my God, this is so fascinating, you know, just at a gut level. It was like, wow, this way of belonging in world. A, it resonates with my own family, but B, it's just in and of itself super engaging. But they, by law, the way the settler, this framework of land rights was written for, and really for the settler state, by law, they had to be, if you're making a land claim, you have to be still represented by an anthropologist and a lawyer. So the older generations, you know, were like, would you be our lawyer? And I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer. Anything else I can do? They said anthropologist. I was like, oh, what is that? Because I didn't know what that was. And they said, this is so funny, spot on too. They said, white people studying our culture. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. They said, no, we don't want you to do that. We together, we want to understand, like you together with us, understand what the hell this thing is that says it's listening to, talk about, can rocks listen? Can white people listen? That says it's listening to us, but refuses to hear us. So, you know, I'm not against anthropology. I'm not for anthropology. You know, it has more than allowed me to like commute, do whatever I want, you know. But if you read my work, you can see it really isn't representing them, or it's like, what is this structure of power if you're looking at it from where we're standing over here? And I think that has to do with how I entered that thing. And then the clan stuff is so interesting, so, because we really did, you know, really relate on that kind of level, but it can't be an excuse to, like, there, I call it right now I'm thinking about it as a white counter reformation. So in Europe and again, it was up near my village area. The Catholic Reformation happened in Trent in like the 1500s, and they were trying to rethink Catholic practices in relation to the Reformation, right? Now we have Luther and all these people, like maybe we have to reform Catholicism. And right now, what I think is happening, interestingly, is definitely in Europe, but elsewhere, all this we once were, these, this kind of European diasporic we once had our own ancestral traditions. I think both on the right, but also on the kind of ecological left, I think this is because the colonial critique and anti-racist critique is working, right? You can no longer just be European, like whatever, and think you're the height of the civilizational matrix. I think colonial critique and anti-white supremacy critique has forced white people to figure out how to stay on top in a new way. And so a lot of people are maybe either explicitly or unintentionally going back, like I do this, I go under, like going back so they can have the future, which Europe always said it claimed, like it was progressive future Napoleon, right? Napoleon and Jenner with Hegel. But also claim the past too. Like it's this really, this is what we're working on. Like, what is this maneuver by which white people can say they're the civilizational apex, and also they can erase all of the materials sedimentation of dispossession of wealth and lands and people by saying, but we also had our own ancestral. It's like, no, you can't just erase that middle part, right? So that's, we think that the Simultaneous Povinellis are a perfect example of, if we go parallel, because if there's anyone who can say, well, I'm indigenous to Corzolo, I'm indigenous to a subnational, I'm not national, subnational space with more than human relations and all that, I can do that, right? So how do you not do that? Or how do you do that within the a anti-colonial, anti-white supremacist framework? And so that's what we're like, and how would you visualize it? And so right, so you could get that this is not in the past, it's the sediment. History is a sedimentation, right? It's all that sweat.
Incrível, muito obrigado. A gente...
This is really incredible. Thank you so much. We are about to close our event. I would like to thank Elizabeth for being here in this event. It was incredible to hear you. I would like to thank Raquel, Rosane, and Laiz for their impeccable translation. I would like to thank you for being here with us. And for those of you who are listening to us and those who will listen to us, I am going to have Paulo conclude. Thank you so much. And I would like to share our warmest acknowledgements to the Karrabing Collective. And may you have incredible days during your stay in this area. I am going to reverberate Roberto's words, my joy of being here this evening. And I would like to tell Povinelli that if it depends on us in the future, we are going to meet somewhere, be it there or here, depending on what we will do. So thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I would like you to offer us your concluding remarks, because I believe it might be the first time that you are addressing the Brazilian public directly. So we would like you to offer us your concluding remark.
You know, I only want to say thank you to everyone who helped organize this on behalf of not only myself, but the entire collective. And, you know, keep the struggle going. Let's all join together and be able to attend to a world that is struggling beside us to stay in place. So bravo. Thank you, everyone. It's been a real pleasure. And ciao.
Ciao, ciao.